What's going on, guys? So if you've been keeping up with the series, you know that at this point in the project, our users are able to create accounts, and then when they log into those accounts, a cookie is set on their browser. Now, in this video, we're going to use that cookie to implement something that I like to call an implicit login, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about with a quick demonstration. So I'm going to go to a popular website, you might have heard of it. It's called github.com. Now, when I go over to that website, my account is shown on the screen and it shows my repositories on the side. It shows my feed, things that are personal to me. So you can obviously see here that I'm logged into GitHub. I did not have to type in a password or a username. I'm already logged in because I had logged in previously. Let's see what happens when we head over to an incognito window or a private window when I go to github.com, the same website. We see here that I'm not logged in and it's showing me a bunch of things. It looks like a landing page for people that are not registered, and it's basically advertising their product and they want me to sign up to GitHub. I'm in the same website. The path is the same. There's nothing different in the URL, but I'm shown different content according to my login status. Furthermore, I'm actually logged in automatically on the left side. I don't have to type in anything to log in. I'm already logged in. This is exactly the type of system that we're going to implement today. So I have the project open here, and I'm just going to give you a quick summary of what we're doing. So we have a cookie set on the browser, and what we're going to do is that on the request of our page, we're going to get the cookie from the user's browser, and we're going to verify the token that we had stored in their cookie. If the token is valid, we'll show them their homepage, or basically like their feed or whatever we need to show the logged in person. If the token is non-existent or it's an invalid token, we show them the registration page. So it's pretty easy to do that with everything that we have set up now. All we need to do is just go to our modules here in GraphQL, and I'm going to do it over here in the login.ts. And we just need to create a query for our GraphQL schema that our client will be sending requests to on that initial page request. So right here, I'm just going to call it implicit login, and it's going to extend the type. So type here is query. So we're going to be extending the query type of our schema, the top level query. And this is how Nexus does it. We do definition. And then here we define the field that we're going to be adding to the query type. So here we'll do t.field, and let's call it implicit login. And I like to call it an implicit login because we are technically logging the person in, or if you want to think of it like that, but they're not actually logging in. It's kind of automatically. So I like to call it implicit login. So here, the type that it returns, for now we haven't created it, so I'll just declare it as null, as well as the resolver will be null. So let's go down here and actually create the object or the type that we're going to be returning from this implicit login query. So I'm going to call it implicit login response, and it will be an object type that we're creating. The name will be implicit login response, and we'll just define it like we do in GraphQL and Nexus. We define it like this, and it's going to be returning a non-null, so a required boolean, and we're going to call it logged in. So we basically just want to return to the client saying, are you logged in or not? Then we also want to return their username in the case that they are logged in. Okay. So now our type will be an implicit login response type, and the resolver will be creating right now. So I'm going to create a file here called implicit login.ts, and just copy over the type definition here. And then we do export const implicit login of this type is equal to this function here, and we import this, and now we can use this function as our resolver. So this will be implicit login function. And now we're done modifying our query so we can just work on the resolver itself. So I'm quickly just going to lay out a couple steps for what we're doing. So step number one is getting the token from the cookies in the request. Step number two is verify the token. Then step number three is return. So the token, the JWT, contains the username already because we set that up in the last video. So we don't need to make any queries to the database. And this is what I love about JWTs, although it has its own downsides. So let's implement step one right now. So we're going to grab the cookies from the request object that we're getting from this specific query. So we set this up in previous videos and we're getting this from the context. So now we can just go here and grab the cookies using the nookies library, which we also have installed into our project. So I'm going to import that library now. And we can just do nookies.get and pass in an object that contains our request. Now you might notice here that the types are not matching up, and this was my bad because I actually made a mistake when making the types for my context. So I put here a type of micro request, but that's actually not true. I thought it was a type of micro request because we're using Apollo Server Micro, but it's not so, because over here in Pages API GraphQL, this is where we're handling all our API requests for GraphQL. The request type is actually a type of next API request. So I need to update that to get this to work. So this is the type. And also next incoming message is not correct because when we're getting a request from our pages from get server side props, the request type is this. So it's a little bit more than that. So I just need to update these types here. And so once we do that, our types will match up correctly. So now we're getting no problems here. Okay, so now we're going to grab the token from our cookies. So const token is equal to cookies.sid or null. So basically, if a cookie exists that goes by the name sid, which we set up in last video, it will be stored in token. Or if that doesn't exist, we'll just set it to null. And so if there's no token, we will simply just throw a new error. And so now we can wrap our resolver in a try catch block. And we do all this in the try block here. Okay, so now at this point in the line of code, we're assuming that we do have a token. So we can actually verify that token and make sure that it's a valid JWT. So to do that, I'm going to go over here in the utils folder in JWT, and I'm going to create a function that will verify our tokens. So I'm going to call it verify token, and it just takes in a token as a string. And it returns a new promise. And we have a resolve, reject. And then here we do JWT.verify. So here we pass in the token and the private key, which is JWT secret. And here we can just make the callback. And this needs to be type of string. And so here we have this callback, and it has error and the decoded token. So now if there's an error, we just return and reject with an error. And if there's no error, we just resolve and return that with the decoded token as a string. So right now this function, the promise type is unknown, so we're not going to get auto completion or type safety. So instead of having this as a string, we'll have this as a payload here. And then here in the brackets, we make sure we pass that in like that. So now this has proper type safety. So now over here, we can just do const decoded token is equal to await verify token. And we just pass in our token like that. And I gotta make this function asynchronous. And so now now that we have the actual token, we can just return here, but we're not getting any auto completion. So what I'm gonna do is run build nexus type gen, and so now we should be getting auto completion here. Here we are. So logged in here will be true, and username here will be token.username. So here we're getting an error because this token is a type of string. Oh, and that would be because I'm doing it wrong. I have to be passing in the decoded token dot and then username. And this is a type of any, but just to make it completely type safe, I'm going to create a type in a file. I'll call it index.ts. And here I'll do export type decoded JWT is equal to, and I'm gonna import JWT from JSON web token, and I'm gonna do JWT dot JWT payload and username string. So now over here, this is a type of decoded JWT. So we just cast that basically. So now this has a proper type. You didn't have to do that, but decided to just do that. So now here we're returning true and the username if the token is verified and if it exists. In the case that it doesn't exist, and we basically have done these 3 steps already. In the case that something went wrong, we just return logged in as false and no username either. And just for development purposes, we want to actually catch the error and do console.log error like that. And what is the problem here? Logged in. Maybe I need to just reset the TypeScript server. Oh, wow. I put logged instead of logged in. That was so dumb. But yeah, that's the beauty of TypeScript. It did not let me go on with such a dumb error as that. So now we have a completely working resolver with all the functionality that we needed. So now we can actually start using this to log in our users automatically. So the first thing we need to do is actually write a query that we can use. So over here in our queries, I'm just going to write a query here, and I'm going to rename this file to index, or maybe login would be more appropriate. And I'm just going to write a query here called implicit login, and all it's going to do is query implicit login, and I'm going to get logged in and the username. There we go. So now if we do yarn run generate, it'll generate the types for us, so we can start using it on the client or in Apollo client. So now I'm going to use it over here when we're sending a request to this index page right here. And in get server side props, we're going to use it to display different content depending on if the user's logged in. And to do that, we're just going to basically return the props into here, basically saying logged in true or logged in false. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is actually create an interface called props, where the username is a string and logged in is a boolean. So we can get rid of this here that we were doing earlier. Get rid of that. And so now here we have access to the props and it's type safe. So we have access to logged in and username here. So here in the home page, basically what we're going to do is that if a user's logged in, we show the home component, and if they're not logged in, we show the registration page. And so here what we'll do is if a user is logged in, we can just return a heading that says welcome, welcome, and then username. And so if they're not logged in, we put the register component. And now all we need to do is get logged in and username from get server side props and do it correctly. So I'm just gonna get rid of all of this and that'll stay. So first we need to get the cookies like this, nookies.get, and we pass in request, and we need to import nookies from nookies. So we have the cookies, and then if there's no cookies.sid, we just return props logged in false and username. We don't need to pass in username. And we want to cast this as the type of props that we created earlier. And so now down here, we're actually going to send over a query to our GraphQL API. So I'm going to grab Apollo client from initialize Apollo. We have set this up in previous videos, so go check that out if you haven't already. In our context, we'll have request, response, and of course the Prisma instance of Prisma client. And we need to import Prisma. It's not doing it automatically for some reason. So lib Prisma, like that. And it was a named export. Okay, so now we have Apollo client working. And we can just do const data is equal to, and we do await Apollo client dot query, and we can query, and we just pass in the type, which is implicit login query. And then here we have access, and we can set query to implicit login document. So this is all happening because we had run yarn run generate, so generate the types for us. So our query is going to be working perfectly with TypeScript. And so now we can go here and return props. Username is data dot implicit login dot username, and do the same thing for the logged in, like that. And what's happening here? Oh, need a comma. And of course we want to cast this as a props interface. And so what we can do is, if there's no data dot implicit login dot logged in, or maybe it's false, then we just return basically what we returned here. So there we go. So if they're not logged in, or maybe this is null or it's false, we return logged in false. And if they are logged in, we return logged in is true, obviously, and the username which we were given back. So now here everything should be working, and we actually test this out real quick. So I'm just gonna do yarn run dev to run the development server, and I'm gonna open this up in the browser. And it seemed to have opened it up here, so I'll just close these tabs here. So, oh yeah, one more thing. I actually need to open up the database and then do yarn prisma db seed. So this will reset the database, and we can just do everything. So we can create an account. So do alicehigh@gmail.com, alicehigh everywhere. I'll sign up. Go to the email address to register my account. Register the account. Now I'm gonna log in. So, and this was actually Gmail. Okay, so now I'm gonna log in. You see welcome Alice High. Okay, so in the browser, the cookies were set. We did that in the last video. The cookies are set now. Okay, now let's refresh the page. We're still logged in. See, everything is working just as expected. And when we go to a private tab and try to head over to our website, we are not logged in here, and here we are. So yeah, that is the implicit login, as I like to call it. And just this with TypeScript, it's pretty pleasant. It's not as type safe as I would like it to be, but it's pretty good. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll definitely be catching you in the next one.